This is the Ryugyong Hotel, the most famous building in North Korea. It was commissioned by the dear leader Kim Jong-il in the late 1980s to show off the Hermit Kingdom's ambitions as a booming socialist state, only to be plagued by numerous construction problems lasting decades. To this day, it ominously hangs over the Pyongyang skyline and is considered the largest empty building in the entire world. But for all the issues it's faced, even now the Kim regime continues to pour an absurd amount of resources into making the Ryugyong Hotel a reality. So what exactly spurred North Korea into building this gargantuan tower? What caused its many setbacks? And what is the state of it today? By the 1970s, Kim Jong-il was quickly being recognized as the heir apparent to his father, eternal President Kim Il-sung. To help guarantee this position, he became more involved in several areas of domestic interest, like architecture. Kim Jong-il placed special emphasis on building up the capital city Pyongyang, which was still feeling the effects of two devastating wars from decades prior. Some of the buildings he ordered constructed included the Pyongyang Maternity Hospital, the Grand People's Study House, and the Tower of the Juche Ideal, the latter named after his father's ideology of North Korean self-sufficiency. During the 80s, however, South Korea saw a period of rapid growth as its northern neighbor began to stagnate. To try and offset this, North Korea cozied up further to the Soviet Union, becoming utterly reliant on them towards the end of the decade. By the climax of the Cold War, there was a race between the West and its communist counterparts to build the biggest and most spectacular buildings, as a means of asserting dominance over world culture. A South Korean company called Sangyong was selected to build the Westin Stamford in Singapore, which became the world's largest hotel upon completion in 1986. Not wanting to be outdone by those Western capitalists, Kim Jong-il directed that an even more impressive hotel be built in downtown Pyongyang. It would be called the Ryugyong Hotel, the name referencing an ancient moniker for Pyongyang which translates to City of Willows. Kim Il-sung believed the tower would be the perfect expression of his vision for North Korea, one he trusted his future successor to carry out with gusto. A firm called Baek Doosan Architects and Engineers was tasked with constructing the massive triangular skyscraper beginning in 1987. The 105-story Ryugyong Hotel was planned to have a total floor space of about 360,000 meters squared and was initially projected to stand at 300 meters tall. This would make it one of the tallest buildings in the world and certainly the tallest in all of North Korea. Design-wise, the building's triangular wings evoke the image of a blooming flower from above, whereas from the horizon it resembles a mountain range. Mountains are an important symbol to the North Korean regime, whose legends state that Kim Jong-il was born on Mount Paektu on the same night a new star auspiciously appeared in the heavens above to herald his birth. An architect who spoke with CNN in 2019 had some theories as to why the building took on the unusual pyramid-like shape, telling them, quote, "It was built like this because the upper levels needed to be lighter. They didn't have advanced construction materials, so it was built entirely in concrete. You can't achieve a slender tower that way. You need to have a massive base with a tapered top." If you look at the history of construction in North Korea since the end of the Korean War, most of the buildings are made of concrete. That's the material that they are familiar with, and the technology transfer between Soviet or communist states is purely based around concrete. The Ryugyong was such a point of pride that it was apparently added to maps and stamps from North Korea before it was even halfway completed. To fund the project, the Ryugyong Hotel Investment and Management Company was created to draw in over $230 million in foreign investment. Crowning the tower would be multiple revolving restaurants, and the government suggested that they would allow outside investors to operate everything from nightclubs to casinos to even hospitals. Daily NK wrote that part of the funding came from a French construction firm who also supplied the necessary equipment. Radio Free Asia later reported that this French company pulled out of the project after the North Korean government refused to pay them. In 1989, North Korea hosted the 13th World Festival of Youth and Students, with the hope being that the 3,000-room Ryugyong Hotel would be ready ahead of the event. This festival was said to be the communist world's answer to the Summer Olympics, which were hosted in South Korea the previous year. To say there was a lot riding on these games would be an understatement. It was the biggest international gathering held in North Korea to that point, making it a rare occasion to show the country off on the world stage. Unfortunately for the government, the Ryugyong project failed to meet its deadline, owing to various delays caused by its unique architecture and the procurement of building supplies and funding. ABC News speculated that issues in building the Ryugyong were further compounded by a fear of reporting them to the supreme leader, which could incur his deadly wrath. CNN reported that North Korea had spent billions updating the country's infrastructure ahead of the festival. The Ryugyong Hotel itself reportedly cost the government over $750 million on construction, about 2% of the nation's total gross domestic product. Needless to say, these ambitious projects left North Korea's finances completely battered. But the worst was yet to come. Trouble brewing in the Soviet Union would soon spill over into North Korea, spelling certain doom for its prized hotel.
Mikhail Gorbachev's dreams of holding the Soviet Union together may have received a death blow today. The Union's 3 Slavic republics announced they are forming a separate Commonwealth of Independent States.
The collapse of the Soviet Union in 1991 dealt a devastating blow to North Korea's already fragile economy, cutting off the lifeline of financial aid that had been keeping the country afloat. With the USSR gone, so too was North Korea's access to subsidized oil, diesel, and electricity, critical resources needed to power cement factories and operate the heavy machinery necessary for large-scale construction. The Ryugyong Hotel, already hit by engineering and funding issues, now faced an even bigger obstacle: a nation falling into economic isolation. Desperate for alternatives, North Korea made a last-ditch effort to court foreign investment by proxy of a Japanese marketing firm, but these efforts were fruitless. By 1992, construction on the Ryugyong came to a complete halt. Only the concrete shell of the building had been finished. Dear leader Kim Il-sung died in 1994 without ever having the chance to see the Ryugyong's completion. North Korea was now slipping into a period dubbed the Arduous March, a decade marked by widespread famine and despair. Despite rolling blackouts throughout Pyongyang, there was hope that the ascension of Kim Jong-il would usher in an era of prosperity that could revive projects like the Ryugyong Hotel. But it would be years yet before shovels once again hit the ground. Radio Free Asia reported that a team of Chinese architects visited the hotel in 1996 and concluded that water damage on the upper floors had ruined the concrete, corroding it and raising the risk of a total collapse. Despite their recommendation to demolish the building, Kim Jong-il's government refused as they believed it could be seen as a humiliating admission of defeat. And so it stood, unoccupied and unfinished for several more years. The regime nevertheless tried masking its abandonment. The Telegraph reported that random lights would shine off and on in the building whenever foreign diplomats visited Pyongyang, giving the illusion it was actually inhabited. Still, economist Marcus Nolan stated that the Ryugyong Hotel was deemed irreparable by the European Chamber of Commerce in Korea when they visited in 1999. Other experts who inspected the site said that the decade of neglect had caused the tower to sink about 30 centimeters into the ground, and that the outer wall had detached. This was confirmed by the German real estate database Emporis, which wrote in 2000 that the kind of concrete used for the building's construction was, quote, of unsuitable quality and therefore unsafe. The Complete Idiot's Guide to North Korea wrote that developers discovered that the elevator shafts were crooked and unusable once the concrete had settled years earlier. Fittingly, North Korean tour guides began acting like the building didn't exist and refused to discuss it with outsiders. Around 2003, the Council on Tall Buildings and Urban Habitats discovered that the hotel was actually 330 meters high, officially making it the tallest hotel in the world. Little had changed with the Ryugyong in the last 10 years since construction halted, but rather than tearing down the country's most colossal building, the North Korean government was rumored to have sought $300 million in outside investment to save the project. South Korean government estimates were far higher though, with some stating it would cost upwards of $2 billion to finish. By that point, a more modest 5-star hotel had already opened in the center of Pyongyang, suggesting the only reason the country would bother finishing the Ryugyong was to save face. ABC News ran an article in 2006 introducing the unfinished hotel to the Western mainstream, pointing out how many conflicting accounts there were about the building's construction. A CNN correspondent familiar with North Korea told ABC, quote, "Every time I've driven to Pyongyang, there's this thing that's ticking up from way in the distance, and it's so out of sync with everything that it becomes a great metaphor for North Korea in many ways." He noted the structure looked exactly the same in 2006 as it had in 1989, still without pipes, lights, or even windows, giving it an eerie quality as it silently towered over Pyongyang at night. Locals avoided acknowledging its existence, much like the subjects in the story of the Emperor's New Clothes. The regime manipulated photos of the Ryugyong to either appear glowing and occupied or erased entirely. And supposedly, it didn't even appear on official maps of Pyongyang by that point. Diane Sawyer pointed out that despite the building's monumental size, North Korea only saw an average of 300 foreign visitors annually at the time. In 2007, the Egyptian conglomerate Orascom Construction Industries penned a $115 million investment deal with North Korea's state-owned Sangwon Cement Company, with Orascom gaining 50% ownership. This fueled hopes that the regime's dormant megaprojects might finally stir to life. After 16 years of the Ryugyong Hotel's raw concrete being battered by the elements, North Korean officials finally felt comfortable with completing one of the most prominent features of the Pyongyang skyline. Chinese construction companies were brought in to perform stress tests and patch up the most unstable sections, though only the exterior was touched. Orascom was tasked with completing the superstructure and finishing the facade by April 2008. Much of their investment would be dedicated to cellular infrastructure, including the installation of a telecommunications tower on the top of the Ryugyong itself. This was particularly interesting as the North Korean government did not allow citizens to own cell phones at the time. The Telegraph reported that telecom's usage would be reserved for just 100,000 government employees. By May 2008, the cell tower was in place, with its frequencies broadcasting from the hotel that had still yet to check in a single guest. Despite concerns from architects abroad about the deteriorating condition of the concrete, engineers went ahead and began installing the striking glass paneling on the Ryugyong skeletal frame. To help finish the hotel, soldiers from the North Korean military were brought in to assist with construction. The North Korean government's ambitious plan was to have the building finally finished by 2012, coinciding with the 100th anniversary of Kim Il-sung's birth. The hope was that the Ryugyong would become North Korea's premier convention center and a hub for business. The Los Angeles Times wrote that North Korea's government was motivated by a fear that Pyongyang had become a joke on the international stage, which could only be countered by a massive urban renewal project. Yet this push to finish the Ryugyong came at a time of economic uncertainty, with North Korea having failed to build itself back up significantly since the arduous march. The Los Angeles Times reported that funding was believed to have been flowing in from South Korea, China, or the Middle East, the latter of which was quite plausible given the Egyptian investments that kickstarted the redevelopment of the Ryugyong. Nevertheless, the government insisted that it was funding these construction projects on its own, with one party official saying, quote, "If we rely on others, our dreams won't be realized by 2012. It is all built with our own technology, our own material, our own labor, our own strength." Most interestingly, for the first time, the State Cultural Department made an official admission that construction had stalled in the 90s due to financing problems. Quote, "To be frank, we didn't finish the hotel because we ran out of money. Now we have the money coming in and we can go forward." An optimistic tour guide told a reporter from the Los Angeles Times, quote, "Come back to Pyongyang in 2012 and you can stay in a room at the top." Forbes wrote that Kim Jong-il still had a heavy hand in directing the completion of the Ryugyong, with a source telling the magazine, quote, "He's always giving on-the-spot guidance." State propaganda boasted of the project's resumption, writing, quote, "Like a phoenix ceaselessly reaching for the sky, the high-rising Ryugyong Hotel is one emblem of North Korea, which is soundly knocking on the door of a strong and prosperous nation." For the first time in years, the Ryugyong Hotel enjoyed official acknowledgement in 2009 when it served as the backdrop for a lavish fireworks show commemorating North Korea's May Day. By this point, only one of the building's 3 wings had glass on it. Yonhap News reported that most of the exterior work was finished by 2011. Interior construction, however, was still a work in progress. The hope was that some of the lower floors would be ready within months. Unfortunately for Kim Jong-il, though, he died that December, without ever having the chance to cut the tape on his long-awaited dream project. The regime, of course, carried on through his son Kim Jong-un, who made it his personal mission to improve the skyline of Pyongyang by ordering the construction of new skyscrapers. The Ryugyong Guidance Bureau drafted a proposal to use the upper floors of the hotel for international commerce and joint venture projects with foreign nations, but this was unsuccessful given the poor shape of the building. Ri Jong-ho, a high-ranking government official who defected from North Korea, told Radio Free Asia, quote, "The biggest problem was that the elevators did not work properly, the power supply was unstable, and the water supply and sewage system had not been established, making it practically impossible to move in." Despite becoming the pride of the Kim regime once more, the Ryugyong Hotel was voted the world's ugliest building in early 2012. And although the hope was that the building would open ahead of the late Eternal President's 100th birthday, the timeline was again shifted to 2013 at earliest. Bloomberg reported that the German hospitality company Kempinski had signed a deal with North Korea to manage the Ryugyong Hotel, making them the first Western company to gain a foothold in the Hermit Kingdom. Kempinski's CEO was optimistic about the hotel's opening, telling Bloomberg, quote, "This pyramid monster hotel will monopolize all the business in the city. I said to myself, we have to get this hotel if there is ever a chance, because this will become a money-printing machine if North Korea opens up." Kempinski's plan was to reorganize the hotel into a mixed-use commercial building. This agreement was part of a ploy by Kim Jong-un to secure much-needed outside investment in North Korea, a notable shift from the insistence on Juche self-reliance touted by his predecessors. Koryo Tours, a travel company offering limited tours of North Korea, offered the first official look at the interior of the Ryugyong, and what they saw was underwhelming, to say the least. The photos showed vast empty rooms that still lacked electrical wiring or plumbing. Their sources indicated it would be another 2 or 3 years before the grand opening of the hotel, and promised that they would offer tours of the completed structure as soon as they were permitted. A few months later, a freelance journalist named SIMON PARRY was tasked by Britain's Mail on Sunday newspaper to visit North Korea undercover as part of a research assignment, which included getting a glimpse into the Ryugyong Hotel. Simon was kind enough to provide us with some exclusive photos of his time in Pyongyang, and sat down to share his experience becoming the first unofficial Western visitor of North Korea's most famous building.
I was living and working in Hong Kong as a freelance reporter, and a newspaper in London had seen stories about this amazing hotel in Pyongyang, and they wanted me to go there and try to get inside it, which I did explain to them wasn't going to be very easy, because the only way you can go into North Korea then and now is on a guided tour, which is very tightly controlled, and none of the itineraries included visits to this hotel. I kept sort of saying to the tour leader, please, could we just go and see this hotel? And he said, no, it's not on the itinerary, it's not on the itinerary. On about the third day, I persuaded him to divert the tour bus on the way back to our hotel, quite close to the Hotel of Doom. And we went to, maybe about 300 meters of the hotel, and it was quite good. It was in the middle of the afternoon, and you could see soldiers sort of parading out in front of it. And it turned out these soldiers were actually working on the interior of the hotel. A whole column of them was sort of marching along at the end of the day's shift. So there was quite a bit of activity, but that was as close as we could get. And it was frustrating, obviously, because I wanted to actually try and set foot inside of it. They didn't tell us a great deal about it. They very much stuck to their script and only spoke about the things that they, were sort of authorised to talk about. But no, they did tell us a little bit about the fact there was lots of work going on. Obviously, the most striking thing about it, and the reason that everybody was paying attention to it all of a sudden, was that it had been coated in these glass tiles. So it was really quite a dramatic feature of the skyline. They expressed a bit of sort of pride about what a landmark it was, and told us that work was going on and that it should be opening soon, without giving any definite details. And clearly there was activity going on during the day inside it, as we saw from seeing the soldiers going past and the workers coming in and out. But that was about as much as we managed to find out. With 2 mornings to go before we left, I thought, well, I'll do a little trial run. I sort of checked it was okay for me to go jogging, and I was told you can go jogging, but only in the hotel grounds. And the morning before I sort of went jogging around the hotel grounds, the hotel was actually on a little island in the river, just outside the city centre. And I went past the entrance, there was nobody there, and managed to cross the bridge towards the main part of the city and got back without incident. On the very last morning before we left, I got up at 5 o'clock in the morning, put my running gear on, memorised the route as best I could from what I'd seen around the city. I was effectively following tram lines that go through the centre of the city, and I set off for the Ryugyong Hotel, about 2.5 to 3 miles through the city centre. It was very dark when I set off. It was a very eerie experience, because the lights were out. There was only one or two lights in the buildings as I went into the city centre. There were quite a lot of people around on bicycles, some people carrying big bundles of wood and all sorts of things. It was almost like being in the countryside in that respect. You were in the middle of the city. It was still dark as I worked my way along the train line towards the hotel. Now, obviously I had no idea what would happen. I knew that what I was doing was not allowed, and I had sort of thought, well, this could go horribly wrong, because I might get half a mile down the road towards the hotel and somebody will shout out, "Spy, enemy of the people," and I'd be arrested and taken off back to the hotel or taken to a police station. But the weird thing was that these people, and I must have been an unusual sight, because you don't see foreigners jogging by themselves in Pyongyang. It was almost as if I was invisible, which was very strange. They almost looked away when I came into their line of sight. I assumed that they just didn't want to get involved, and I imagine that if you went to the authorities and said, "Look, I saw a foreigner running through the streets of the city without a minder," or the eye of suspicion would be turned firmly on you, they'd say, "Well, that's very interesting. What were you doing out on the streets at that time? Did you have any conversation with this foreigner? Were you associating with it?" I imagine that there's probably much more to lose than there is to gain by reporting something like that. So I carried on uninterrupted, and I got to the hotel itself, and it was all in darkness, and with one light over a side door, and I sort of picked my way gingerly over this old scaffolding and signs of work and building work that was going on outside. I could see inside the lobby, which was all completely empty, bare walls, bare concrete walls, and lots of building materials lined up, but no sign of any great progress inside of the bare walls. And I went to the side door, and that was when I saw a soldier, obviously a solitary soldier on patrol inside the hotel, and he sort of caught sight of me and looked just bemused to see a Westerner in running gear standing at the entrance, and I gingerly sort of waved at him, and then turned around and ran at first slowly and then more quickly back towards the hotel. As I went back towards my hotel, it was getting light, and so there were more people around, but again everybody turned away when they saw me, and the only people who reacted in a normal way were some kids who sort of shouted and ran alongside me for a little way, in the way that 6 or 7 year old kids would, and I carried on, and the worst moment was when I got to the bridge across the river going back to my hotel. As I turned onto that, there was a column of soldiers marching in step across the bridge towards me. I thought, well, that's it then. They're going to obviously break ranks and arrest me. But again, I thought, well, I'll just keep going and see what happens. I ran at the side of the bridge past them as they came towards me, and they all just kept their eyes fixed firmly ahead and carried on marching as if I wasn't there. And the only way in which I was challenged was after I got back and went down to breakfast, and the tour guide took me by the arm as I came out of breakfast. We were actually leaving Pyongyang that day, and asked me if I'd left the hotel grounds, and said I'd been seen leaving the hotel grounds and had I taken pictures that I shouldn't be taking in Pyongyang. And luckily at that moment, one of the other members of the tour group, who I knew, but none of them knew what I was doing there or that I was doing anything undercover, just walked behind me and swapped my camera, which was in my hand behind my back, with his, and walked away without being seen by the guide, so that when he asked to see the camera, there was only yesterday's pictures in it from the other guy's camera, so he probably saved my skin.
The Ryugyong Hotel faced yet another setback when Kempinski pulled out of the project in 2013, blaming market conditions in North Korea. Some speculated that recent UN sanctions placed on North Korea over their continued nuclear testing were the cause of the weakening economy. After a few more years of once again remaining dormant, foreign visitors to Pyongyang noticed a number of lights on at the building one night in 2016. NK News wrote that an anonymous source from Pyongyang had told them that Orascom's CEO was believed to have been in town visiting the hotel. As such, speculation swirled that the firm may have resumed construction on the tower's interior. By 2017, it was clear that work was again underway to beautify the areas surrounding the Ryugyong Hotel. Kim Jong-un had directed military units dubbed soldier builders to continue work at Ryugyong, as part of his plan to usher in a great golden age of construction. Concrete barriers that had hidden the building for several years were torn down, revealing newly paved walkways and a sign reading, "Rocket Power Nation." NK News reported that new roads leading to the Ryugyong were being paved, proof that the North Korean government was still intent on completing their biggest building. In April 2018, a massive 15-meter-tall LED screen had been set up on the side of the Ryugyong Hotel, which was lit for the first time on the birthday of the Eternal President. Clips of propaganda films, along with images of various monuments to Juche, were seen broadcasting on the display for several hours each night. The Associated Press wrote that the most eye-catching displays were reserved for the center side of the building's display, with more rudimentary images occupying the flanks. The proud designer told the Associated Press, quote, "The goal of setting up this light screen is to give confidence and hope for the future to our people. The response has been great. The national flag at the top of the building is hundreds of meters high and everyone can see it. It fills them with pride and confidence in being a citizen, willing to work very hard." Despite the Associated Press writing that the light show would be broadcast indefinitely, NK News wrote that the times it was lit up during the week dwindled as the months went by. Radio Free Asia reported in 2024 that the rights for building casinos in Ryugyong Hotel were up for grabs, provided that the winning bid promised to cover some of the cost of finishing the building's interior. This was part of a ploy by Kim Jong-un to once again woo international investment in his country. A North Korean citizen interviewed explained that casinos were seen as particularly lucrative by the regime, adding, quote, "When the casino is built at the Ryugyong Hotel in Pyongyang and the hotel's accommodations, restaurants, swimming pool, and billiards rooms are finally completed, tourism in Pyongyang is expected to be revitalized." That August, the North Korean government was apparently in talks with various Russian construction companies to finish the job once and for all, though few were willing to bite owing to the state of the structure. Despite multiple attempts across three regimes at completing the skyscraper, as of summer 2025, the Ryugyong Hotel remains incomplete with no clear direction on how, or if, it will ever be finished. And that's the anomaly of the Ryugyong Hotel. If you want to learn about another weird building with a troubled construction history, check out our video on Italy's La Velle di Scampia. Or, if you want to learn more about other North Korean architectural nightmares, you may enjoy our video about the Mangyongdae Fun Fair amusement park. A special thanks is in order to Simon Parry for chatting with us about his visit to the Ryugyong Hotel. See you next time.
Kim Il-sung and Kim Jong-il wanted the new buildings to look graceful and imposing even at the time of our distant descendants. They also wanted the interiors of these buildings to cater to our people's sentiments and modern aesthetic taste.